The Kansas City Chiefs host the Las Vegas Raiders. I still to this day want to say Oakland all the time, but they host the Raiders nonetheless on Christmas Day, and they come up quite a bit short in the matchup, their second matchup against the Raiders this year, and the Chiefs fall to 9-6 and still leave that little bit of a window of opportunity open to possibly not even win the division this year, and quite frankly could miss the playoffs. Honestly, mathematically and statistically, obviously the last two matchups for the Chiefs are pretty favorable, with the Bengals sporting a backup quarterback as well as the Chargers doing the same thing in the last 2 weeks of the season. This upcoming week, final home game of the year, and then they will follow that up week 18 against the Chargers in LA. And our first bit of news, we're going to get into all of that and discuss plenty. But first things first, the breaking news of the day: Russell Wilson has been benched, according to sources. And right now I've got an article from CBS pulled up just to kind of show some of the top landing spots. But just looking at that contract, apparently the benching comes from Russell Wilson not wanting to give up that guaranteed money protected if he were to get hurt. And so just coming straight from the article right here, barring a drastic turn of events, the marriage between the Broncos and Russell Wilson is effectively over less than 2 full seasons by benching the veteran quarterback ahead of Week 17, largely in effort to avoid paying out potential injury guarantees in Wilson's lucrative contract. The Broncos are broadcasting to the world they're prepared to split with the ex-Seahawks star after 2023. So this article comes with a top 7, it looks like, landing spots possibly for Russell Wilson, and there's quite a few spots on this list that are actually pretty interesting. And shout out to Ray. Me and Ray were talking about this earlier when this broke. And just to go quickly over the list that they've got, number 7 is the Buccaneers. Interesting situation, just with Baker Mayfield being the quarterback there in Tampa Bay right now. Wouldn't be a terrible move. Maybe a bit more of a lateral move. Maybe a little bit of an upgrade from Baker Mayfield. And with that offense, depending on how Mike Evans shapes out and Chris Godwin over the next year or so, obviously they're getting older. They did win a Super Bowl, so, I mean, we'll see. I kind of like that idea, but right now, I don't know. I mean, the Bucs might end up in the playoffs this year, so we'll see. They won't be, as this article mentions, they won't be picking high in that 2024 draft. So a possible way to get a veteran quarterback on the roster. Raiders come in at number 6, and now this one was one of the first ones I kind of thought too with the Raiders, but the only problem with that is within the division. You know, I don't know. Obviously, the Raiders, you know, they've seen the Broncos twice a year the last couple of years with Russell Wilson, and, you know, trading in the division always is kind of weird when it happens. So we'll see. You know, both sides will probably want more than what they could get either way, I would say, just within the division, and, you know, not wanting to give up too much against a team you're obviously going to see twice a year. So the Raiders, to me, is kind of an outside looking in, but a possibility for sure. And with the Raiders, same thing in the same position as the Buccaneers right now, with, you know, probably not going to be picking high up in the draft, and would be a nice move to get a veteran quarterback in there to see if they can make a run at things. Obviously, with picking up Devontae Adams, the Raiders and now buying into what Antonio Pierce is doing, and, you know, we'll probably get more into that, but Antonio Pierce, I mean, he should absolutely be the head coach next year. And if the Raiders make that same mistake twice after Bisaccia a couple of years ago, I absolutely thought he should have been named the head coach. They go out and get Josh McDaniels, who, you know, at this point is very much proven that he is not an NFL head coach. Number 5 is the Steelers, another interesting one where they're kind of going to be middle of the pack in the draft. And if Kenny Pickett, you know, they're not all in on him, it wouldn't be a terrible idea, depending also what happens with his contract, because this is a huge contract that you're going to have to take on. And, you know, wherever he goes, you know, we'll see what, you know, what he's willing to do, and if he's willing to rework this deal at all. You know, because at the end of the day, it's going to be hard for the Broncos to get too much out of Russ Wilson, I think, just based off of his performance in the last 2 years and the amount of money he's getting paid, because just to look at the contract real quick, pulled up on Over the Cap right now. You're looking at still next year a guaranteed $17 million going to him. He's going to be a cap hit of 35. In 2025, it'll be 55, 58 and 26, 53 and 27, and at the age of 40, Russell Wilson will be a $54 million cap hit. Look at the savings that the Broncos could possibly make if... and they're still going to be paying pretty much all of this throughout. It's going to be tough for the Broncos. Big news, though. I can't believe that they benched him. And obviously this has kind of been going on for a couple of weeks, a little bit of rumblings with him and the management kind of getting into it over the money, and probably, with the Broncos thinking, what can we do to, to be able to bring in, some extra life to help this team, and the money that they are going to pay to Russell Wilson. Man, $245 million contract. 124 of it guaranteed. So you're looking at a $49 million APY. Man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for the Broncos to get much out of him, I think. Next on the list, Patriots, then Commanders. But the Patriots, I thought off the top of my head, would be, might not be a bad fit for Russell Wilson, honestly. And, we'll see, if Russell Wilson kind of turn his career around, because at this point, where he's at, much different quarterback than we saw in Seattle, that we have seen in Denver. And, him and Sean Payton, obviously not seen eye to eye too much. At this point, I feel like that shows even more. They haven't seen eye to eye. Just looking at this too, Denver seeking flexibility because they would owe $37 million to Russell Wilson in March. So something to be aware of. The Commanders is the next one, and going into that situation, they don't have a quarterback at all, and could be a very lucrative situation for the Commanders to be able to pull off something like that. The Giants come in at number 2, and another one that I thought, I mentioned to Ray when we were talking about this, Daniel Jones. Like, what's the future of Daniel Jones? And, what can the Giants possibly maneuver in this deal? Because the Giants would be a good landing spot, I think. That was one of the first teams that kind of came to my mind of, somewhere that would be willing to go make a move for Russell Wilson. But actually, number 1, I hadn't even thought of this. But would be a great landing spot as well as the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if that offense 100% suits Russell Wilson, but I think that they could make it work with him. And right here, I'm just going to read straight from this article on the Falcons. Atlanta hasn't fielded a sustainable quarterback since Matt Ryan's unceremonious exit, so regardless of Arthur Smith's fate as head coach, they'll be in the market. The Bears' Justin Fields registers as much more appealing possibility considering his youth and upside, but Wilson could be the best alternative if they can't move up to secure a top prospect in 2024. Again, he's done some of the best work when captaining a run-first attack, and that's exactly what Smith has been trying to cook up for the Falcons. From Wilson's perspective, Atlanta also plays in perhaps the most winnable division in the NFL, and that's a fact. Kind of looking at the Bucs, who started off this list, a very winnable division. And maybe even New Orleans, a possible landing spot too. But the Falcons, I think, would be a good spot for Russell Wilson, just because, again, that run first attack. But I'd rather see Justin Fields in Atlanta. Honestly, when the Lamar Jackson contract talks were going on, and wasn't sure if he was going to stay in Baltimore or not, this is the one team that I would love to see Lamar Jackson be at the helm of, because I think it would feed into exactly what he does, and he's having a great season in Baltimore, and Baltimore the number 1 seed in the AFC right now. So Russ, I think, would be a good fit for the Falcons to possibly, continue to do what they're doing. Obviously, Desmond Ridder is not it, and Justin Fields would be, I think, even better, just because you have the upside, but a possible win now with Russ that could come in, maybe add another free agent or two around, although with that contract, see how you can work it and maneuver it. But insane stuff going on around the division. So that just first up, I just wanted to kind of go over that with that breaking today, and being within the Chiefs division, obviously with the Denver Broncos, and they're going to be in limbo searching for a quarterback. You're going to have two franchises in this division without a quarterback, it looks like, after the season is over, unless somehow the two sides can kiss and make up and make it work. I doubt that's going to happen. But just to go back to the Giants for a minute, obviously Tommy DeVito has had a great little run here at the end of the season. Not sure if he's really your quarterback of the future, but he has done good in this Dable offense, which I think Russell Wilson would also fare well in, possibly. And just to go real quick to kind of compare Wilson, let's see, with maybe I don't have pulled it up, but just to go over his, to compare these last couple of years. So just to look at his grades per PFF, he is improved from last year, and he's about at the same level he was in his final year in Seattle. And you look in Seattle, he put up 3,113 yards, a 7.8 YPA, which has been less this year at 6.9, but 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions this year, 26 and 8 with 3,075 yards. Obviously, he's probably not going to get another snap this year. He's actually got the highest graded running the ball this year that he has of his whole career, with a PFF grade of 80.3. His highest before that was his rookie season in Seattle at 80.2. Just looking at that, see if I can pull his running grades up. All right, maybe not. Well, either way, there it is, rushing. Just kind of look at his stats, what he's put up this year, rushing-wise. Yards per attempt at 4.2. He's rushed for 388 yards. He does have 3 touchdowns, which he had 3 touchdowns last year, although he does have 10 fumbles, which his fumble grade is the worst of his entire career. So Russell Wilson has had a bit of a comeback year this year in Denver after the atrocious year they had last year. 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He did throw for 3,540 yards, which was a little below average for his career. That last year in Seattle, 3,113 yards. Again, this year, just about on par with that last year in Seattle. But that's, obviously they should have taken from that what they were going to get out of Russ. He was declining already in Seattle. The year before that, he had one of his better years at 4,386 yards, 42 touchdowns. That was a career high. 14 interceptions, also a career high. And then the last year in Seattle, 25-6. So he was starting to slow down already. I think there were some signs already at that point. And you're looking at a 35-year-old quarterback. He is on the backside of his career. And, whoever is going to go out and try to get Russ is going to be kind of probably a bridge situation where they're going to, try to see if they can win, maybe in Atlanta, New York, and try to see if they can pull off, some winning seasons and get them to that next step, which we'll see. Also, another one that I mentioned to Ray, me and Ray talked about, obviously, we not knowing what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins, Minnesota might be a spot that looks to go after Russell Wilson. Although, pushing the ball deep down the field is what that offense likes to do, and I don't know if that's going to be necessarily the best for Russ. Looking at him this year, his deep ball is not the best. Although he does have a really high grade, actually. I guess he's only thrown 1 interception on deep ball. He's got a 92.3 grade on 20 plus. 88.5 medium. So honestly, the closer you get and behind the line of scrimmage at 73.6. Honestly, I guess he's having a better year, honestly, throwing the ball deeper and pushing the ball down the field. About the same as last year. His highest graded the year before. Well, I stand corrected here. Just looking at the numbers, I stand corrected. So maybe a good fit for the Minnesota Vikings to go out and get a Russell Wilson. And, I think an NFC team is going to have a better shot at making a deal for Russell Wilson just because, one, especially going back to the Raiders and trading within the division, I just think that that's a lot of times hard to do, and you don't want to give up too much, On the other side, you don't want to, not get enough in return. I digress. So, moving on from Russell Wilson news on to the Kansas City Chiefs. This weekend, or I guess Monday, it was Monday, was an absolutely atrocious game. One of the worst games I think that I've watched in a long time, and this has been a rough year. I have not turned around and walked away from a game in a long time. I had to take a break from this game. I listened to it on the radio in my basement for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and I can't remember at what point that happened, but, during that stretch towards the third quarter, I think, because it was in the second half. Aiden O'Connell, 9 for 21, 62 yards. He didn't complete a pass in the second, third, or fourth quarter. That's insane. And the Chiefs still lost this game. Patrick Mahomes, 27 of 44, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Mahomes is having a terrible season, and I think that it all lies within the fact he just does not trust any of these receivers. Mahomes was the leading rusher, 10 carries, 53 yards. Pacheco did have 11 for 26. Not a good game from Pacheco, and the Raiders were keyed in on their run game the whole game. There were points in the game where I thought, especially early in the game, why are we throwing behind the line of scrimmage? I can't remember what the exact stat was, but the Chiefs had a net of negative yards in the first half. Terrible game. Bad play calling. Everything all the way around was just not good. This was not a good game. And just sucked the joy out of Chiefs Kingdom, I think, on Christmas Day. And it was a rough game. And, it continues to be that story of if we can clean it up. I mean, it's week 16. We're going into week 17. If we can clean it up, at this point, can you clean it up? Not if we can. Can you? Because I don't think you can at this point. The Chiefs have to play perfect to win these football games. And the lost faith in the receivers, I think, is really what it boils down to, because you have no faith in anyone on this team really at this point. And I mean, even Travis Kelce has had his woes. He dropped a pass on this, almost dropped another one. He had his moments. He had 5 catches for 44 yards, no touchdowns. But that's another thing, is the regression is here with Travis Kelce. And as much as I know none of us want to admit it, but I think absolutely that the regression is here for Travis Kelce, and that's what this year has shown us. Travis Kelce has slowed down. It's really hampered this offense, and to not only see the regression of Travis Kelce, which granted, he's probably going to get 1,000 yards still, 968 yards, 5 touchdowns, but his grades are significantly lower than they have been really in his entire career. His second season is about the only season, grade-wise, looking on PFF right now, that is even remotely close to this year. A 79.3 grade offensively. Does have a good pass blocking grade, 76.4, which is the second highest of his career. Go back to 2019, that's 77.4. So he has done some good things, obviously. But I think that the days of relying on Travis Kelce and Travis Kelce alone are over. I think that that's absolutely showed this season. And it's not his fault. He's getting older. I mean, you're talking about, a 34-year-old tight end in the NFL. And it's not easy to play, a long career like this in the NFL the way Travis Kelce has. And the fact that, honestly, me looking at it right now, seeing that he's got 968 yards, only 5 touchdowns, which is the lowest since 2016 thus far. 2016 had 4 touchdowns. Since last year, 16. 2021, 12. 2020, 14. 9 in 2019. 11 in 2018. Hasn't seen the end zone. And that also goes right along with the fact that you don't have any receiver to worry anyone in the league. Rashee Rice is a rookie that's hit and miss at times, but he's your brightest spot. I think we need to see more Richie James. Richie James has been a bit of a bright spot for the Chiefs here these last couple of weeks especially, I feel. And looking at this game, he had 3 catches for 54 yards. Solid game for Richie James. But between Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, and Richie James, and even Justin Watson, I mean, that interception really just kind of lazy route, gave up on it. And again, I've pined for J. Watt through this year because, again, look at what you've got. You've got a guy that's on a $1 million salary hit this year that is not supposed, he should be like a wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5, honestly. And that's no knock to Justin Watson, but the fact that he's he's pretty much wide receiver 1 or 2, right? At this point he's 2 to Rice, but he should not be put in that position. Justin Watson is very much a role player and should be, treated as such. And you look at Marquez Valdes-Scantling in this game, no catches, 1 target. Obviously, there's absolutely no trust there. They try to get Justin Ross involved a little bit. Obviously, the suspension messed a lot of stuff up with that could have possibly been a big-time help to the Chiefs, getting him, a rapport in the system. But I think at the end of the day, you see Mahomes holding onto the ball longer. He took 4 sacks in this game, and that's, straight from the fact that you don't have a receiver that can catch the ball. Rashee Rice got 12 targets, caught 6 of them for 57 yards. It's tough. And they can't play clean. They cannot play a clean game. Flags still. There's another offsides call on a receiver that was on MVS, and I think at that point MVS really didn't see the field much, and I don't think he should at this point. I mean, really, what is the point of having MVS out on the field? 44 penalty yards in this game on 5 penalties. And you look at the yardage, 308 yards to 205 yards. 100 more total yards. 22 more offensive plays. They held the ball for almost 10 minutes longer than the Raiders did. They fumbled the ball twice, lost it once. Got intercepted, 2 turnovers to the Raiders, none. That's huge, and that's something I, hammered last year on the Chiefs' route to the playoffs is the turnovers have to, that has to change. And I think it's no different this season, even more of a stressor this season because this offense can't do anything right, it seems like. At least what it feels like. And when they do, it seems like it's so difficult to be able to get down the field and score. So at this point, I make all these points to make this one large point. I feel like after week 16, I think I'm finally ready to have the discussion because I feel like I've kind of tried to, I guess, I don't know how to say, just not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily on Matt Nagy. We know Andy Reid is the one calling the plays, or at least, that's what we've been told, right? That's why Bieniemy couldn't get a head coaching job. But I think right now it's kind of, at the end of the day, you kind of got to look at it for what it is, right? This offense is nowhere near what it was last year, and absolutely the personnel is different. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, showed they need somebody to be able to hold that together, and you cannot put that on a rookie. They needed some type of veteran presence in there that can actually step up when they need him to and be able to maneuver in this offense how they need him to be a possession receiver and continue to have that threat. The Chiefs really have no threat on any level. And what Juju did also complemented what Kelsey does. You have 2 guys out there that are working to find their way to an open zone in the field. Meanwhile, you have somebody running a route, whether it's MVS or somebody, which at this point, MVS is almost, it reminds me of, I can't remember if they called him a sledgehammer. It was I can't remember the movie. Martin Lawrence movies, basketball coach, coaching kids, and they got this uncoordinated kid that is huge, comes in, they call him the sledgehammer, everybody's terrified of him, and all of a sudden they realize he's super uncoordinated, can't do anything, they run all over him, and he can't, doesn't execute at all on the court. MVS is that kid. MVS is absolutely that kid. We have seen MVS cannot make the plays when they need to be made. The Eagles game, the drops all around. He's had chances to be the hero. He is not that guy. Nobody is scared of MVS. That's why they went out and traded to get Mecole Hardman back. Get somebody that can stretch the field. I think Richie James could be that guy to be able to stretch the field. But again, I don't think you can put that on this rookie role to be that role and to have somebody that's still learning the offense in his first year in the NFL but to complement Kelsey the way that Juju Smith-Schuster did and be able to open up the rest of the offense. They don't have that. So it is also kind of hard to say, it's a Nagy versus Bieniemy issue, and I feel like that's why all year long I've kind of stayed away from this topic. But I think at this point it's almost, it's a good time to kind of talk about it, because what is the problem? There is no discipline. There is absolutely 100% a lack of discipline within this unit. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is consistently going up to the line and moving receivers around, saying, no, you're here, you're there. They don't know what they're doing. The receiving room is absolutely dreadful at this point. They don't know what they're doing. Mahomes is having to tell them what to do on the fly. They're not running their routes great. They're being lazy. There's no sense of urgency whatsoever with these receivers. I mean, even late in the game where you're down 2 scores, it just seemed like the team is just like, whatever. We're out here to play, and if we get the job done, we get the job done. If not, it is what it is. So I don't know if it's 100% just to blame on the offensive coordinator spot, but at the same time, we can have the discussion, because I feel like the play calling is not great. And again, you want to go back to Andy's the one calling the plays, and I feel like Andy needs to be held accountable just as much too, as if you're going to hold any kind of type of coaching accountable for this. The lack of discipline is where the coaching, I think, really comes in hand, because I feel like that's a reflection of the coaching. And, the Chiefs really have never, in the Andy Reid era, been exactly the most disciplined team ever, but usually they can maneuver around it. This year it just does not seem like they are able to really maneuver around the fact that they are just not a disciplined football team. And it's been better before. I don't think it's been this bad in years past, but it is pretty bad this year, I think, and that does go back to your coaching, I feel. That being said, I feel like maybe Eric Bieniemy was pretty much the processor, if that makes sense. You have all this crazy stuff, all this crazy scheme, all kinds of stuff that you want to do and you're trying to do. And, I think Bieniemy kind of kept the Chiefs down to earth at points. And, very much seemed like the rift between him and Mahomes, if there was a rift, obviously we'll probably know more about that in years to come. But it does seem like there was a rift. And going back to that Bengals game where Bieniemy, I think probably just wants to kick a field goal, run out the clock. Even when you look at the Colts game last year where it looked like they got into it, same kind of situation where, Pat wants to push the ball. He wants to score as much as he can and, put it on whoever they're playing and, try to go past essentially a rational call or a rational, way to go about things, kick the field goal here, let's just take the 3 points, in the Bengals game, rather than let's try to score again, let's put this thing, away before we even go to the locker room. So I think that may be one where the rift came from, and two, really, to a point, what probably helped make the Chiefs very successful is because you're going to have to, with offensive minds the way they are, here in Kansas City with Nagy and Reid and Mahomes and Kelsey and the way they want to play football, and Tyreek when he was here, the way these guys want to play football, they want to make big plays, they want to make the splash plays, they want to have that flashy offense, and that's fine. But sometimes you got to be able to just stick to the basics and be able to do things that are going to set those big plays up, right? And so I think Bieniemy probably was the perfect balance, the yin to the yang of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and I think we might be seeing that because there's no filter anymore. There's no processor and eliminating, okay, right now this is what we need. The Chiefs have done a decent job at, running the ball when they need to, I think, this year, and have done a better job of that, honestly, but, I mean, they've had to. These receivers have just not been good. Like, let's just call it what it is. We'll call a spade a spade. The receiving corps has not been good. Another thing that I wanted to touch on before I get out of here and wrap this up was the fatigue factor. So I was watching this 3-part series between How to Make a Basket on Secret Base, and it was the Kobe and Shaq beef. And at one point, I think it was during the second one, they started talking about fatigue after their, run that they had, their 3 championships, and they lost the last one. That's 4 years, right? This is going on the 6th year right now for the Kansas City Chiefs, that we have seen the Chiefs either in the Super Bowl, whether they're winning or losing, or at least to the AFC Championship game, right? They've been to the AFC Championship game 5 years in a row. They've been in the Super Bowl 3 out of those 5 years. They've won 2, they've lost 1. They've won 3 AFC Championship games, they've lost 2. How many more practices? How much more media time? How much more, scheming? How much more film watching? How much more everything have the Chiefs done than any other team in this league? There's no other team in this league that has played as much football as the Kansas City Chiefs, that have thought about football as much as the Kansas City Chiefs, that have game planned as much football as the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at the whole 3 different times, the whole week that you have media week. There's a whole week off in between the championship games and the Super Bowl, right? You're flown to wherever the destination is. You're doing media all week long. Just those media, obligations right there. The talking to the press after all the playoff games, the scheming for the playoff games, the practicing for the playoff games. Think about what a difference of a toll that is. The Chiefs are playing from July to February every single year for the last 5 years now, and into the 6th year now. So the fatigue is there. And obviously all the players and all the coaches haven't been the same, but Andy has always been there. Patrick Mahomes has always been there. Travis Kelce's always been there. Chris Jones has always been there. A lot of these guys have been around for a while now, and, that just brings a different level of fatigue to a team that is, struggling to try and go win another championship. And at this point, and shout out to Ray one more time, because we were talking about this as well, and because I mentioned this to him, and this team has already won 2 championships. What is the difference between going to the Super Bowl and losing versus losing in the wild card round, right? I mean, the goal is to win championships, not get there at this point. It's to win more, right? So honestly, I wouldn't even be too disappointed at a wild card loss for the Chiefs, or if they didn't even make the playoffs, honestly. Obviously, I would love to see them go to the playoffs, go make another run, and win another Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, right now, what is a first-round exit versus a loss in the Super Bowl, loss in the AFC Championship game? Either way, you're not getting to that end goal. Super Bowl or bust is what it's going to be every year from here on out. You need to get to the offseason. You need to reload. You need to rebrand this team and come back next year full force. And I almost think it would be more of a detriment for them to go very deep in the playoffs in a year like this, where they need to really rebuild the offense and the structure of the offense. You got a lot of decision making with Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. I know there's a few others in there I can't think of off the top of my head, but got a lot of big decisions to make. A lot of money to be thought about where they're going to place it. A draft that is going to be a very monumental draft in, this whole, Chiefs dynasty at this point with Veach. And for Andy to be able to have, these players you've got, as well as what the entire interior of that offensive line that's going to come up in the next year or so. I mean, we can get into all the team building stuff here in the future, and we're going to go deep into that when we get there. But as for right now, I just don't know if a deep playoff run is really a good thing for this organization right now. Either way, I would love to hear your opinion and your thoughts on this, any of these topics, honestly, that we're going over. One, what are your thoughts about Russ? Throw it in the comments below on YouTube or wherever you are listening, as well as Nagy or Bieniemy. Do you think that that's an issue with the Chiefs right now? And the fatigue, what do you think about the fatigue? You think it's really a factor or not as much as a factor, especially with the turnover in football? But personally, I think that it's kind of getting to this team. Either way, if you listen to the whole podcast, I really appreciate it. If you listen on YouTube, like, subscribe. If you didn't listen on YouTube, go over to the Papa Schro Knows YouTube or Papa Schro YouTube page. Hit the like button, smash that subscribe button. I appreciate you listening, whether you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. Follow on those platforms, and we will see you next time. Go Chiefs.